Don't you see this is all just an accident? You actually thought you were chosen because you're so smart or something? Don't be so vain. It just happened to fall around here and you just happened to pick it up. And that's all there is to it.
The Netflix Death Note movie is hot garbage.
You have probably one of the most interesting characters of all time, and you just reduce him to this fucking pathetic little bitch.
I'm gonna address this right off the top. I know this is based on an anime. I've never seen the anime. I didn't know about the anime.
Netflix Death Note is garbage.
Are you looking at this?
But hey, I'm just stating a fact. After all, if so many people have already made so many reviews of the film, surely I can't bring anything new to the table, and that perhaps there's nothing wrong with any of the criticism that's been levied at the film.
It's not fucking light!
Don't get me wrong, I do not think the movie is great, but it's not because I think that it's bad because it's not a one-for-one translation of the anime and manga. And to be frank, there is merit in comparing the original source material with the adaptation. To an extent. This video isn't going to be a gotcha moment on those who basically hate the movie for how it's not on par with the original quality of the show. I'm in agreement with that Netflix Death Note belongs in one place.
Know your fucking place, trash!
But this video won't be complaining for the most part about how it's different from the anime. Rather, this video is going to go over the biggest issues that I have with the film in more regulated chapters. And hey, we'll be going over some positives here and there, however rare they are. So when I make a comparison to the source material, it's not a complaint that the movie isn't like the anime or manga. It's just that the anime and manga had a better execution of those elements in my opinion. And hey, what's the worst that could happen to me? What could possibly... So let's start off strong by talking about the worst aspect of this train wreck of a movie, Light Turner.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
When I first saw what Light looked like and how different he was from the original Light, you got yourself a clean-cut genius character compared to someone who's willing to say something completely stupid like this.
Because that would make you over 18, which means that if you were to beat me up, which I'm sure you could, it would technically be childish.
Knockout!
The entire movie does what it can in order to paint Light Turner as a
Particularly bright kid.
that he's playing multiple games of chess in order to play the system and do things that are rather dumb. There are some bright things that Light does do, like with him wearing a top hat during the prom scene, because that's actually pretty clever to have a top hat be the signifier of the goons who are tailing Light. I like that. Now let's take a moment to list all the things that make Light to be an idiot.
You just made the list!
Not wanting to read all the rules in the Death Note.
Who wrote those warnings about you in the margins?
Oh, is that what we're gonna do with the note light? Rules and warnings? What are you doing?
Light holding the Death Note in broad view at school. Light and Mia doing and talking about Death Note things in the public school.
Slow down for just 1 second.
That son of a bitch killed them all.
You?
There's so many rules in that thing. There must be some kind of loophole or something.
What's he gonna do if you go after him?
Not listening to Ryuk's warning.
I knew eventually you wouldn't be able to handle playing. I asked politely, but you didn't hear me. Let the note go. Look at the strife it's causing you and your little girlfriend. Let me find it a new home. We'll be free.
You're a fucking idiot!
Not realizing that Mia stole a page of the notebook after the two had an argument and left to go upstairs.
There's a guy in the news who killed a couple kids. I thought maybe we could make some popcorn, take some names down for later.
I'll see you tomorrow.
A few minutes later.
Did you kill those FBI agents?
What do you think?
Where is it?
What? Are you out of your mind? It's my fucking dad!
Yeah, and he just dared us to kill him on live television.
This scene.
Kira.
Kira? What does that mean?
It actually means light in Russian or Celtic.
I think I've made my point. You see, the movie is trying to paint Light as something that he isn't. It's trying to paint him as a righteous genius character, but everything that the movie shows us runs polar opposite to that. And I'm not saying that a character like that can't work. There are plenty of fictional stories of characters who are given power that is beyond their scope, and that it's interesting to see them fly so high only to crash down to the ground. And that's exactly what the movie is trying to go for, because they make that Icarus comparison in the movie itself.
You're the one who flew into the sun. I'm just here to make sure you actually burn.
Which, by the way, that's not what happened to Icarus. When you get your references wrong, it only makes your genius characters look like they're acting smart and not actually be smart. And it's something that the movie loves to do for a lot of its characters. There's also the fact that the writing really loves to stuff down your throat that Light's motivation for doing this is because his mother was killed and the guy who did it got to walk away scot-free.
He killed my mom, he nearly beat his girlfriend to death, and you just sit there saying the same bullshit about how people better just trust you.
What a big happy family we got here.
Which, while a good motivator for why Light wants to get revenge, it sort of falls flat in the grand scheme of themes. The best example comes with the FBI agents that are tailing Light and the other Kira suspects, and how Light says he doesn't want to kill innocent people.
We don't kill innocent people, Mia. Even if I wanted to, which I don't, taking out the guy that's following us would only indicate that it's me.
But the problem with that is that we're shown in the film that there have been people who have been killed who are innocent. Unless you're telling me throughout this entire train wreck, only the people who were written a death note died. The same thing can be said about the Japanese scene that I can't show because YouTube and Netflix are full of it. Well, to point out, not only the gangsters are dead, but so are the strippers. So while not innocent in a sense, people who probably weren't written in the death note still died.
Do you think Light is a hero or a villain?
You know, I think that he's kind of both, really. You know, I mean, like, I think ultimately it's really for the audience to kind of decide, and I think that's kind of the fun of the movie. You know, like, I think he's the type of guy where, like, you know, if we were able to do some sequels, you know, I think it would probably become more clear which one he is, you know. But I think with this one, I wanted to specifically leave it in a place where, you know, regardless of if he's good or bad, by the end of the movie, you know, the consequences are definitely real for him. And
liar! So you'll have to forgive me if I don't find Light to be all that compelling of character, especially when you got scenes like this.
Take your top! Take your top!
Like, did no one want to do alternate takes here?
I don't want to run away!
I think that answers my question.
Disgusting creatures, get out of my sight.
I know that's the wrong character, but sometimes the performances sound so phoned in, like the actors just didn't really give a Much like Light, L is one of the bigger issues in the Netflix adaptation, and no, it's not because he's black, but watch as everyone else will.
I don't know.
MangaKamen.
I never met
MangaKamen.
or had any contact with him, but I'm sorry, I can't go on.
That's okay. Your tears say more than real evidence ever could.
Gotta love the internet sometimes, right? In any case, much like Light, the movie tries to portray L as much smarter than he actually is being shown to be, especially if you compare L with the original L. The best example is when they both confront Kira. Netflix L does a full-on press conference where he's right in the open.
Unless, of course, you'd like to kill me right now.
You asked for it.
We've already seen that the Death Note in the movie can control people to do things that up to 2 days. It's something that even Ryuk explains to Light.
Rule 20. A subject can be influenced for no more than 2 days leading up to his death.
2 days, your fingers are huge.
Oh, shut the fuck up!
And if L was as smart as he was when he determined that the first victim was in Seattle, he should have also noticed that the criminal was acting weird, so it should be easy to understand that Kira can also control his victims, since Light has his victims write Kira on the bloody walls. So L apparently didn't take into account that Kira could have mind controlled someone, commanded them to attack L, and then kill themselves. It's even worse when you consider that the press conference is on the street, where someone could take a car or a sniper and do the deed. I would imagine it would take time, but Netflix's L is making a lot of assumptions here.
We know that he wants to kill me, but is unable.
And the original L did the same thing. He went off an assumption, but he didn't do it stupidly. Not only did he keep himself in the shadows when he confronted Kira, but he used a proxy, Lind L. Taylor, a conflict who was kept out from the public eye, and was able to use that to his advantage to learn that Kira couldn't kill certain people, or couldn't kill them without certain information.
Unless, of course, you'd like to kill me right now.
It was a call that was done in the masterful manner, and Netflix adaptation makes L to be a lot more stupid. After all, as Light says in the anime,
I guess you're just too stupid, L. Too bad.
This could have been a lot more interesting if you'd only been a bit smarter.
I get the idea that Netflix's L was going to be a bit more emotional than what the original L is supposed to be. Of course, I would argue that the original L actually can be quite emotional at times.
僕がキラならなんて話せるのは僕がキラじゃないからだよ。そうですね。ライト君はキラじゃない。いや、ライト君がキラでは困ります。ライト君は私の初めての友達ですから。
The thing is that his emotions didn't get in the way of his investigations. Most of the time, in fact, it wasn't what caused his downfall in the original anime. Meanwhile, Netflix L is willing to confront Light, show him his face for no good reason, and not even have a backup plan. And I hate doing a comparison piece, but when L in the anime revealed himself, it didn't leave himself wide open.
I want to tell you I'm L. What?
Not only did L have a false identity lined up that would get a famous person killed if Light wrote his name in the death note, but he also caught Light in a more sensitive time and put pressure onto him. My point is that the original L wasn't as reckless as Netflix L, at least not to this degree. And that's what actively hurts this movie, that our two main leads of this game of cat and mouse aren't actually all that smart. The appeal of the original Death Note was compelling because of all the mind games, the bending of the rules, and the characters actually acting smart and using whatever tools they had in order to manipulate people and try to catch the other one. That's what made the first season of the Death Note anime amazing. The second season...
The notebook is definitely on the miss.
But regardless, when the movie is trying to paint your two main characters, the characters who are locked in a battle of wits and logic, and they do stuff like this... Wait, did he slip? Oh my god, they really went with the take where L actually slips. Why is it my editor is a much better editor than a professionally paid editor? What the hell? So I've already talked about how some of the editing choices are... well, they're interesting to say the least. Now, I'm not one who goes gaga over camera angles in films. Like, I can appreciate something interesting, like cinematography, unique shots, and set pieces, but they don't actively add or hinder to my experience when watching a film.
None of the shots were interesting or creative.
Horrible job, everyone.
Hell, I'm a guy who loves Kamen Rider, and while there are certainly some amazing camera works right here, fight choreography and wire work done in it, that to me is more of icing on a cake. But considering that I've already stated that the cake itself in Death Note, the conflict between L and Light, isn't all that strong, I feel like talking about the editing and music choices of the movie. For some reason, there's a huge use of Dutch angles in the film, even for scenes that don't really call for it. The reason you want to use Dutch angles is because the director wants to portray psychological uneasiness or tension in a scene, and for some of them, they actually do work pretty well. I like one scene where after L initiates a raid on Light's house, we see Light in his messed up room where we see police lights blaring into the room. I like that scene, it's actually pretty nice. However, when there's an overuse of Dutch angles, it makes the scenes lose their flair because of the overuse. It's like too much of a good thing will actively hurt ya. And like sticking your hand into a bubbling vat of burning oil, it's not gonna end well. What also doesn't help is that the music choice, which unfortunately I'm not sure if the music is allowed to be played on here because of YouTube's copyright system. I know it likes to screw people over like this. I'd rather not play the music, but when I think about a movie that has mass genocide, some very gruesome deaths, I don't expect to be hearing the power of love, especially when I hear this line.
You humans are so interesting.
That's the look I had on my face with this music playing during this movie. The music you choose in a scene can make or break it, and constantly Death Note chooses very odd music to play. Like, take the fight scene from Kamen Rider that I showed earlier in this video. That music with that scene is appropriate because it's fast-paced, it's empowering, and even works with the actual hits of the characters at times. Meanwhile, let's look at the opening of the Netflix movie.
Run! It's Godzilla! It looks like Godzilla, but due to international copyright laws, it's not. Still, we should run like it is Godzilla!
though it isn't.
Like, this is extremely slow. This drags its heels of the movie, and this is the first thing we're getting introduced to in this flick. This is the tone setter, and it comes off as boring as all hell. Not really the greatest way to start off a movie that's horror-themed? Like, I get the idea is the calm before the storm, quite literally, but let's do a quick comparison to the original opening of Death Note. With a demonic holy chorus in the background, it lets the audience know that they are about to get into a messed up and creepy story. It sets the tone. And the tone is important to establish early on, and the music and editing can do quite effectively about what your audience can expect. But with Death Note's opening, we're shown a school with an odd choice of music interlaced with some odd choices of scenes, like a train yard, a couple of policemen. This doesn't mentally prepare me to think that I'm going to be watching someone explode from dying from electricity.
I want them to say, thank you.
That's not how that works! Like, I know this doesn't count for this section, but some of the deaths in this movie are extremely outlandish. Like for the bully, apparently Ryuk has the ability to suck people's skulls out of their heads and turn their body into living gelatin. Like, there should have been some bone! That actually leads into my next point. In my opinion, one of the worst aspects of the Death Note movie is that it remains inconsistent throughout the entire film. I've already explained that with the characters.
2 days, your fingers are huge.
But the biggest inconsistency is with the Death Note itself.
Each death must be physically possible, so no shark attacks while someone's on the toilet.
Apparently, Ryuk has the ability to use psychic powers. I didn't know he was a Pokemon. The thing is that the rules of the book are so inconsistent with the film. Like, for example, I can buy that people whose names are written in the book can be controlled by it for a few days. But nowhere do the rules state that people who are part of that death are controlled by it. There are two major examples of this, the first being during the second Death Note name, where we see a big guy get run over by a cop van. Now, I don't have a problem with someone getting run over by traffic in order to die. However, the fact of the matter is that the gunman was in the street for so long, you would have figured that the van driver would have seen him, especially considering that the street was cordoned off so the driver would see him in the street. That would mean somehow Ryuk controlled the driver to kill the gunman. That kind of contradicts what the Death Note can do, since it's effectively controlling someone whose name is not actually written. The second is when Watari is about to die and the soldiers kill him. Again, why does the Death Note and Ryuk have control over other people? Why did the soldiers shoot Watari? And the thing is, there could have been a good way to fix this, to have the soldiers actually attack Watari and shoot him. And that was to give Watari a gun, hold said gun, and draw it on the soldiers. At least that would have kept in line with the rules of the book and still give the soldiers a reason to kill Watari since he pointed a gun at them. What I'm getting at is that while the rules in the Netflix adaptation are different from the pre-established rules from the original source material, that's not the problem. The problem is that the adaptation doesn't follow the rules that it itself established. Especially when we consider that Ryuk, despite not wanting to like light, does things that help him, because there is no establishment that the Death Note couldn't control people who are not written in it, especially since there was no establishment that the Death Note could control people who were not written in it. Thanks for keeping up with your own consistency, Death Note. You really know how to do it well.
All you ever do is complain. You never try to make things better.
So, this section is dedicated to things that personally just irked me, and things I really liked in the film at some point. Like, for example, I like Willem Dafoe's take on Ryuk. It's actually pretty marvelous.
I could squash you like a bug right now.
And that's sad because he's actually the highlight of the film. Because the rest of the cast...
All I'm trying to say is, you have the chance to stop the type of people who make things hard for everybody. You gotta see the big picture here. Light, I'm really sorry about your friend. I'm sure he'll be fine. You across the line.
They're just not doing for me, man. And there are a number of takes that sounded stilted and awkward, and it just take me out of the experience. And that's not groovy.
He did. That son of a bitch killed them all.
You?
There's so many rules in that thing. There must be some kind of loophole or something.
What's he gonna do if you go after him?
They do have their highlights, but sometimes they come off as funny, and I know they're not supposed to be funny. It's what made me think that the best way to go about watching this movie isn't to take it seriously and take it as a comedy.
This is bad comedy.
Which, when you view it like that, it actually makes the film to be a lot more entertaining and bearable. There was something about Watari that kind of irked me throughout the entire film.
Would you mind singing a song for me?
Of course. You're out of the woods, you're out of the dark.
What in God's holy name are you blathering about?
Like, it's just so weird, and it's something that surprised me a lot of reviewers didn't bring up when I was watching other reviews to get a grasp of what the complaints were. Maybe I just wasn't watching the right reviews, or maybe my brain flew out of the coop when I was having to subject myself to watching this mess of a movie multiple times, that I forgot what was happening in those reviews. What I do remember what happened was the chase scene. Oh yes, the chase scene, because when I think Death Note, I think about a high-speed running scene. That doesn't count! Although, editor, keep playing that in the background because I know the chase scene from the movie will get claimed. The scene goes on for too long, it's nonsensical, especially when they left in a part where L slips, and the way it ends is just so random.
Don't move! Do not move! This man is Kita. I'm working with law enforcement in order to capture and eliminate.
Like, I know that this is a Kira follower, but it's just so weird, and like, why would L say this man is Kira? Just say he's a criminal that's on the run. Again, maybe it's just me thinking that the world's greatest detective should know that people actually like Kira for what he's doing, and there's actually a cult-like group who are saying what Kira is doing is for the... Shut it! The deaths in the movie are really inconsistent. Like, I already brought up the guy who got electrocuted with his head exploding, but when Mia dies, it's not as gruesome and even as glorified. What with all the flower petals floating about? And why the hell does Ryuk put the page of the notebook that has Light's name on it in the fire? And how would Light even know that there's even a fire lit there? Like, the notebook doesn't have the power over destiny, and the page floating in the fire is just plain stupid. Like, let's just end this. I think it's safe to say that I agree with most of the internet that this movie is terrible, not even for the fact that it's a terrible adaptation. Even if Death Note wasn't as popular as it was, and this thing was able to stand on its own, I can't see it being an actual good movie. It does have that it's so bad it's good quality if you look at it as a comedy, but this movie wasn't meant to be taken as one.
For us, it was always about like, let's look at this in a new light, you know, like what happens when you set this in Seattle, you know, and all the things that can entail there, and you know, but it was always about like, even though a lot of the, you know, the details were going to change within it, we always wanted the kind of core philosophy of Death Note, you know, the exploration of good and evil and the gray area in between, and the cat and mouse chase between Light and L to still be there, but we wanted it, you know, the characters and everything else to have a new kind of feel and context to them.
And as such, I can't help but be disappointed by this mess. And what's worse is that this is a trend of live-action anime. That most of the time, the fact that the anime can't be transmitted to another medium so easily, especially when there's so much content to work with and when you're not being consistent with your own rules, it makes for a huge mess. I am not against adaptations as a whole, but my issue with adaptations, especially when it comes to things like anime and video games, is that people creating them don't seem to really have a good grasp on what makes the stories of these forms of media so good. And oftentimes because of dumb internet critics, because the adaptation is bad, then the source material is seen as bad.
Most video game plots aren't very good.
You're a fucking idiot!
Still, I think what scares me more is that there's a possibility of there being a sequel to this mess of a film, but thankfully, that does seem to be put in the grave at this point. Then again, this movie was stuck in the limbo for ages, and it still happened. Oh god. Not again.
Attention, file. March for miles to share our love with the stars above. We mean it truly, cause it's our duty to salute your beauty. Nobody gets another out of town. There's no denial, you leave us stifled with your radiant smile. Yeah. Move to the beat, you better put on your goggles, cause we're gonna bring the heat. Cruise with me, there's lots to see.